Taking the leap, meeting life on your own terms. That's something Karen Wickre did after 3 decades of life in corporate communications, including 15 years at the tech giants Google and Twitter. But that belies her influence. As former Wall Street Journal columnist Walt Mossberg put it, Wickre is the best connected Silicon Valley figure you've never heard of. People certainly have heard of Tess Vigeland. For 11 years, she was the host of the popular public radio program Marketplace Money. And like Wickre, she knows about taking the leap and meeting life on her own terms. She left Marketplace without a plan B. From there, she was able to travel to Asia solo and build a successful career as a freelance journalist. Just this fall, she was honored with one of broadcast journalism's highest honors, the Edward R. Murrow Award for creating and hosting After Paradise, a daily news show to serve survivors of Northern California's devastating Camp Fire. Clearly, these 2 women know about making life work on your own terms. Please welcome Karen Wickre and Tess Vigeland to the Northwest Passages stage.
Go ahead. You can sit in the first one. Wow, full house. This is wonderful. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to Rob and everyone who helped put this event together. This is so exciting. I'm so honored and delighted to be in celebrating the Northwest Women of the Year and also the celebration of the 19th Amendment. 100 years, yes. And also to have these 2 amazing women here tonight. So, Karen Wickre is the author of Taking the Work Out of Networking, Your Guide to Making and Keeping Great Connections. She's a former senior editor at Google, which is a position she designed by herself, for herself, and editorial director at Twitter. She's been a columnist for Wired.com. She's a groundbreaking woman in the world of tech, and what I really appreciate, because I was an English major, is that her undergraduate and graduate work focused on the arts and humanities. So she really created this amazing career path in the tech world. And Tess Vigeland is the author of Leap, Leaving a Job with No Plan B to Find the Career and Life You Really Want. She spent over a decade as the host and anchor of NPR's Marketplace Money, and she left the job without a plan. And she's gone on to a whole lot of amazing things, including hosting NPR's All Things Considered, and writing for The Times, and writing for The Guardian. And her book really illustrates the pain and the perils of taking that leap, but also the joy that can come from that. And I will say, I was reading her book intently on an airplane last week, and the flight attendant stopped and asked me what I was reading, and I told her, and she said, "Oh, I was a trapeze artist for years. I always jumped without a net." She got all excited. So the book clearly resonated with her. Hopefully she had a net.
I know. So my first question for each of you is, you each had dream jobs. I mean, jobs we couldn't even dream of, being at Google or being at NPR, and these super cool jobs. How do you know when it's time for a career change? Either one of you, leap in.
Well, I will. I'm so happy to be here, and I guess this mic isn't working, so this one is. You know, I've had a long career in Silicon Valley, and it's a very fast-moving but cyclical business, a lot of familiar themes over and over again. And while I loved my time at Google in particular, I remember thinking, I hoped I didn't have to leave. I hope I never left. And then there just came that day where I had thought, I'm not doing anything new. I'm not doing anything new. I'm now one of the longer term people here, and so I get sent the newcomers to show them how to navigate a bigger and bigger company, which wasn't really that interesting to me anymore. So I just had that moment of realization. And similarly, then I had another few years at another company, Twitter, And
We have heard of that, yeah.
Yes, yes. Very interesting company. I love the product. A lot, we could have the whole evening about that. But in any case, it was again, I thought I can see myself not here, right? I can see that the time is going to come to an end, and I have to make a plan for that, for myself. Not that I knew what I was going to do exactly next, but I knew I'm going to eventually roll out of this place. And I think it just had to do with, it's not enough to say, I have the brand name, and everybody else thinks that's cool. That's not enough. Ultimately, you have to be satisfied with the job and be continuing to learn on it. And for me, I realized that wasn't happening.
Yeah, like Karen, I thought I would be there forever. I used to say that I was going to die at the microphone. And I still sometimes wonder if that would have been the way to go. But like Karen, I also started to feel a bit restless and a little bored. I always used to say, I hosted a personal finance program, and I used to say that there are 6 stories in personal finance, and you just tell them over and over and over again. Save for your retirement, save for your kids' college. Don't get a wild credit card and spend to the limit. And so for me, there were several factors that came into play. I was also just not happy in my workplace. And at one point, I just thought, there has to be something else out there. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I have to go. And so I did. And I had no idea what was coming next. I had absolutely no idea.
But you were looking for joy.
I was.
Looking for...
Yeah, and a little more fulfillment than what I had, which people don't, they look at the career I had where I was pretty close to the top of my industry. I had a national show. So how can you possibly be unfulfilled? But I think you just know here, somewhere in here, that it's time to make a change. Now, it's probably wiser if you plan for it. You might not go through some of the stuff up here that I went through, but you just, you have to follow your instinct. And Karen and I have talked about this, that really is what I think we both have learned, that you need to trust your instinct.
Well, you both also had a network.
Yes.
And so maybe both of you could talk about how you were helped by the fact that you had really developed a whole bevy of people who came along to give you some help along the way.
Well, I admit I'm a big believer in cultivating a network. Although I wish there were a different word than network, because everybody hates the idea of having to do it. It seems fraught with, a feeling of phoniness and tit for tat kind of transactions and so on. And I understand that. I don't like that either. But maybe like Tess, media and technology both are fast-moving businesses, a lot of change in companies and ownership and programs in the case of media. And so if you're in it, you're also taking new jobs and evolving and changing, and so are the people around you. And I think the thing that I had done it instinctively and then understood, this has great value, was simply keep in touch with people that I had known along the way. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of touch, not constant touch, but enough to be able to call on people when I needed. And that's, I think, an important life skill to have, to be able to just tap someone that has even a good sense about things. They not necessarily the answer for you, but just, to know that there are people out there that you could confide in or you could brainstorm with. And that's the value of having kept in touch and having a sort of virtual web of people that you can call on.
And you did the same.
I kind of did, although my situation, I think, was a little different than Karen's, because I just did not know what I wanted. I just had no idea. I thought, do I want to leave journalism? Do I want to go I love animals. Do I want to go work for a humane society and clean out kennels? I mean, I was really at that point where I just thought, am I going to do, 180 or 360? I think it's 180, right?
180, I think.
Am I just going to completely step off and just go do something wild? But I couldn't make that decision, and it took forever. And, fortunately, I was able to, because of the skills that I had, I was able to freelance, so I had an income coming in. But I just really thought that it might be time to go do something completely different. I didn't end up doing that, but I do recommend that people take a little bit of time in their lives to really think about that. I recommend that you do it before you quit a job. Mostly because, and I alluded to this earlier, it's the emotional and psychological toll that you do not expect when you find yourself in a position where you don't know who you are anymore. And in this country, our identities are so tied to what we do for a living, and that is not the case in every country in the world. It is the case here, and so when suddenly you don't have that anymore, particularly if you've had any element of success, it's really tough to deal with. So I recommend that people take that time. I didn't know I was taking the time when I was doing it. I thought I was panicking. But it turned out to be a really good exercise because it forces you to think outside of what you're doing in the moment. And so it's much healthier if you do that while you're doing something that you enjoy. Start thinking about what else you might want to do. What are your passions? And I was a terrible networker, which is hilarious because I interview people for a living, right? I literally would go up to strangers on the street and say, "Hey, can I talk to you?" So it's not like I have a problem with being around people and asking them questions, but I was a really bad networker. I wish I had your book back in 2012. But, I think part of it is you do feel your way through it.
So maybe if we back up for a minute, because I was thinking about your pathways to success and thinking about my own pathway to being a university president. And my parents loved education, but never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that their daughter would become a university president. I'm sorry they didn't live to see that happen, but it was not in the cards. They never could envision it. And I was thinking about your two paths, and I'm sure your families and your friends growing up weren't expecting you to take those pathways. So how did you break out of that mold of this is what you're going to be when you grow up, which I'm sure you must have gotten some of as you were growing up?
Yeah, for me, my folks were from kind of rural working class backgrounds. Both their families had been farmers or ranchers or something out in the country. And so they were the generation, actually both of my parents were few of their siblings to actually finish high school and move to the city for jobs. And so they were big believers in education, but they weren't that particular other than, for me and my brother, other than you're going to have to earn a living. So you're going to work. In other words, don't expect to get married and not work. Their much bigger emphasis to me was all about work and being self-sufficient. And I got the classic, I came up in the 50s, so the classic line I got was, you should have a job where you're helping people, and that usually meant nurse or teacher. That was really kind of the gold standard. And I loved school, so that part wasn't a problem. But growing up in the 50s meant I was a hippie around mid-60s. And so then everything was, for me, there are so many options, and everything is wide open all the time. It took me years to understand the options eventually go away, even if you haven't chosen one. But anyway, that was a long time in coming. But In any case, I mean, I did love school, and so I did study liberal arts. I was very good at writing always and editing, and I loved reading about history. So I didn't have a plan. My mom insisted I take typing, of course, in high school, and so that is probably the single skill that I've been using for over 50 years, right? And I'm a very good touch typist. But after that, you know, my parents were kind of out of advice, and it was more just get a job, earn money, get a job, earn money, and I stumbled along. I had no grand plan. I had ended up with 2 liberal arts degrees, and when I look back, I see, oh, I was gravitating towards publishing, I was gravitating towards writing and editing, and now I can make sense of it. But at the time, it was a job after a job that had some interesting element to me, and it was basically those. So the way I broke out in those days anyway was simply to have kind of white-collar jobs, I guess, and then some academic, but also I just thought, well, I'm going to have to keep working, and I like working around publishing. That eventually led to tech, but that's another chapter.
Well, I will just say my mother used to tell me, well, of course you're going to get married and have kids, but you'll be able to think about Shakespeare while you're changing diapers. Okay, that's a plan.
Motivation.
Motivation.
Yeah, for me, I thought I was going to be a concert pianist. I started studying when I was 5, and by the time I got to my junior year in high school, I was looking at conservatory. And then toward the end of my junior year, my English teacher said, you know, you're kind of a good writer. Do you mind if I send you over to the newspaper, the high school newspaper? And I said, nah, I don't really have time for that. I was like a theater geek. So I was doing plays, and I had my piano, and I was too busy. And he was like, no, you know, I really think you should give it a shot. By my first story, I was like, oh, I'm going to journalism school. I absolutely fell in love with it instantaneously. I'm not sure why. I mean, I do like writing, but not that much. But I think a lot of it was, and it still is my very favorite part of being a journalist, talking to people. I love talking to people, and I love the freedom that I have as a journalist to ask you whatever I want to ask you. You don't have to answer, but I get to ask. So I ended up going to journalism school, and after my freshman year in college, I got an internship at the public radio station in Portland, Oregon, where I'm from. And they put me on the air my second day. Now, I'm 18 at this point, and they put me on the air because they were short-staffed. It was summer, of course, and they sent me down to cover, my first story was a strike by the librarians downtown. And I came back with this story, and they helped me pull tape and write around what we call cuts, which is the pieces of tape within the script, and I completely fell in love, absolutely fell in love, and was fortunate enough after I graduated to get a job there, which speaks well for internships. Tell your kids to get internships. And I was one of the lucky ones. I found the thing I wanted to do really early. You know, at 17, 18, you really don't know what you want to do, but I ended up in the right thing. And so, you know, I was also fortunate that I had parents who were like, whatever you want to do, and you can do anything. I was a child of the 80s, and I think pop culture told me that as well. So, really different era from you, and I'm grateful for that. Oh, I'm sorry, no.
I know what you mean.
Let's just say my teachers didn't tell me that I had to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Which I actually would have loved to do. So, you know, I think that those kinds of decisions, some of it is luck.
Yeah.
Some of it is pursuit. I definitely pursued it, and I was really fortunate. I actually got to my dream job at a public radio program called Marketplace when I was 31. And it was a national show. It was the place that I'd always wanted to go. And there I was hosting a radio show with millions of listeners. But I will say that when you achieve something that early, that's when you start wondering, well, what's next? And I'm still figuring that out.
So there are university students here tonight. We got some students out there. If you raise your hand if you're a student, yay. Okay. So our students they're probably going to change careers 12 times or more during the course of their lives.
Yeah.
And we know that...
Different era from me.
I mean, for 100 years before today, a guy would go into a company or an organization and rise up in the ranks and stay with that organization until he was 65 and retire. And that whole model is now gone. And so we're in this world where people are moving around much more and changing careers and changing jobs. What are your thoughts on that? What advice would you have for our university students?
Well, this is actually something I will say I do write about in my book, because it is true that very few people have the same employer, and many people now are not going to be in the same field for many years. And so it behooves us, in terms of keeping in touch with people, all the more valuable, just in order to keep exploring what might be the next thing, what might be a thing I might be interested in that I can go talk to somebody about, that I might not know enough about, but I need to hear firsthand from someone in the know. So that is part of it, and I think I feel lucky that I fell, and I do mean literally fell, into the world of technology, partly by dint of my interest in media. I was always a news hound, and I always read all the mastheads and the bylines and so on. And I ran a couple of media organizations, and that happened to lead me into my first tech job, which was working for the founder of one of the big popular computer magazines in the 80s. There were thousands of these things. And this guy had started PC World and PC Magazine and Macworld, and they turned out to be well known and well established. But I knew nothing about this world. And just having that, somebody picked me. I mean, he said, would you like to come work for me? And I said, who do you mean? You know, I barely touched a computer. I knew really nothing about publishing at that point. But that opened a door that has remained open now for all these years. And I took the lesson from that. Even then, I thought, this is a world I didn't imagine, and it turned out to suit me. It turned out I liked the fast pace, I liked the fun that we made of all the nerdy stuff and the jargon, and especially at that time, I think it's still true to some degree, but at that time, nobody was an expert in computer technology or personal computing or any of that. We were all English majors in a certain way. And so that made it as fun too. It was sort of like new, and it was fast paced. So I became aware very early on. It seemed odd, certainly to a lot of my friends. This just didn't add up at all. But what I liked was it was fast paced, and I liked the people in it, and there was a kind of sense of humor and kind of marvel too about all the things that technology was doing even then, and how quickly it was changing. You could see within a 5-year span, so much new would come out of the old. And that has stayed with me. So that is now a driver for me of what interests me, or the way I think about things. So I don't assume anything lasts, and I don't assume that there's a safe perch. I just think, you know, what's going to be next, and what would I like to look into.
Okay,
I think that's really a wise point, that there is no safe perch. And because of that, you know, you mentioned the man who would start a career, be there until he's 65 and retire. They're rare, that's just so rare now. So financially, that means that it's much more risky for everyone who's out there. But on the other side of that, today's young people, today's college graduates, you don't have the pressure to stay in something, especially to stay in something that isn't bringing you joy. Now, not every day on the job is ever going to bring you joy every time. Trust me. But you have to have some sense of contentment in this place that you go to for more than half of your waking hours, right? And so today's generation really has the opportunity to explore, and whatever you start out doing when you graduate, you don't have to do that for the rest of your life. So don't. I mean, really, this is the freedom that is out there for you today. And Lord knows you are saddled with student loans and, an economy that makes it so that you can't buy a home. But that also frees you up not to have the life that maybe you think is prescribed for you, whether it's marriage, kids, buying a home, whatever. If you want that, fabulous. If you don't do it. You don't have to.
Good, that's good, yeah.
So I would really say, just take advantage of the time that you're in. And, when you leave a job, obviously do it in a way that is nice. But you don't have to stay. It's a contract between you and your employer. You can break it just as much as they can.
That's great.
I have to say one thing that also made a mark on me. I just remembered this. As a kid, my dad had, he was a radio engineer that turned into being a satellite engineer in those days. And he always felt he'd missed out on further education. And I'll never forget watching him. He hated his job. He called it pencil pushing. In his later years, he just felt like, I'm not doing anything. And I remember watching him in the kitchen cry at night because he had to go back to that job the next day. He was a child of the Depression, and there was no getting off. And that made such an impression on me, and I remember thinking, I'm never going to be in that situation. Whatever it takes, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to have that happen to me, and it never has.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. So my next question you've already begun to answer, which is really, again, talking to the young people in the audience. So in this very volatile environment that we're in, what kinds of advice do you give to young people about making decisions, about crafting the next steps of their lives?
We touched on this earlier, and I have become such a believer in trusting my gut, in trusting my instinct. And it's really hard to do when you're young, I think, because, again, this life has been prescribed for you by society, by books, by movies, what it's supposed to look like. And that's not a bad thing. But my advice now, at my ripe old age, is that you don't have to do that. You can step off. I took a midlife sabbatical, granted it to myself, and I went and traveled and lived abroad for almost 3 years. I was supposed to come back after a year, and then I forgot. And a lot of people were like, you're doing what? You're stepping off of the career ladder? You're not supposed to do that, especially as a woman.
Did people worry about you? Did they, like, are you all right?
Geez, yes, yes, absolutely. They were worried about the gap in my resume.
Yeah.
They were worried that I was going to come back and no one was ever going to hire me again. And that's not true. But, I think we are set up to fear taking risks. And what I've learned since stepping off that ladder myself almost 7 years ago now is that if you trust yourself and if you have made a network, like Karen has talked about, and if you've made yourself useful and gathered skills that will benefit you for the rest of your life, you'll be fine. You will figure it out. And you have to trust yourself that that will happen.
I think, yeah, here.
Great.
Here.
Great. Yeah.
I think I'd only add to that that maybe the something we would say in tech is your default should be to yes. Meaning, you know, if you don't know the answer to something, you don't know the outcome. When Rob Curley sent me a Facebook Messenger message, and I hadn't probably talked to him and seen him in 10 years, and before that it was 10 years prior, or 5 years prior or something, and he said, "Can I call you to describe this event?" It was a lot of Rob's enthusiasm and a lot of fast talk, and I said, "Sure, it sounds fun." That's a small default to yes, small but important one. But I think just the idea that since I've left my last corporate job, let's say, I would never have predicted the things that unfolded one after the other, that are the result of the thing that I just said yes to before, and that opened another door, and then I've done another thing that I had never done before. I could not have mapped it, I couldn't have planned it or built it, but that's what's happened. And I'm so grateful for that, because it's the opposite of, I can't do that because I have to do this. And I hope for all of us we don't have to be in that position more than necessary.
Yeah.
Right.
Bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's not going to kill you, why not try it?
Yeah.
Well, and I'll put in a plug for university education.
Yes.
That really helps
Yes.
to expand your options.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Here.
All right, now we're going to be taking some questions from the audience for a minute, but let me just ask you, sort of as our final words of wisdom, things you would like to share at this moment. This is a wonderful conversation, and I know people are going to want to hear more from you, but what else would you want to share?
Yeah, well, first of all, this has just been delightful. And someone asked me earlier, when's the last time I had been to Spokane? And it's been a long time, although I am a daughter of the Northwest. And I had no idea how beautiful it was here. Holy cow. Wow. It is really spectacular. Might have to come live here sometime. Yeah. I would say yes to that. But, you know, again, I guess I'm going to be a broken record and just tell you again that your life does not have to look like what everyone has told you it's supposed to look like. You can step off. You get one shot at this life. You get one. You don't get another one. At least, well, I don't think we do. I don't know.
After all that time in Asia?
Yeah. If the Buddhists are right. But, you know, find the things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
And find the things that will also take you out of believing that you are what you do for a living.
Yes.
You are not. Even when it's an awesome job. I had an awesome job, but the problem when I left it was that I thought that was me. I thought all I was Marketplace's Tess Vigeland. And who was I if I was just Tess Vigeland? Well, that's absurd. I'm pretty cool. So, you know, think about the other things that you love in your life. Pursue those. You might turn that into a career someday. And there's nothing wrong with that. Your life does not have to be linear.
That's great.
In fact, it's unlikely to be if your eyes are open. Yeah, I think I would just add that sometimes you don't know what the name of a thing is that you're doing or that you like or that strikes a chord. I noticed recently that I'm a connector in a way more than I am a networker. I love putting other people together. And I've done this a few times with groups. And so I have a group now that I started when I started working for myself. And we're all independent contractors, and we meet once a month just to talk about things that we're doing in business and whatnot. And I said to the group one day something about, I said, one thing I'm thinking about is I'd like to maybe think of having a group of older women be, another group that I start. But I don't have the time right now. I'm not sure what the purpose of it is. I don't know. And then 2 or 3 people in the group said, your eyes lit up when you said that.
Yeah.
I said, really? And they said, you better pay attention to that.
Yes.
Which is why I'm glad I formed that group. And I am paying attention to that. So that sometimes you don't have the name of the thing that is really resonating for you, but that's okay. Just pay attention to it.
Well, and I go back to that word joy. It's so important to be able to wake up in the morning and feel like your day is going to give you joy and that you're going to be able to give joy to other people.
And I think it's different from happiness.
Yeah.
Happiness, I think, is a problematic word. But if you find a sense of joy within what you're doing, that's like the holy grail, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Rob, can we take some questions?
This is a beautiful theater.
I know.
Wow.
Will this mic reach over to here? Okay. That's a hard no. So,
Do you want
is there
this
another
one?
handheld in the back? Okay, all right. Okay, so we're having a little bit of a mic problem. So is it maybe we skip the
I can
Q&A?
walk down and people can talk into this.
You get, okay?
All right. Let's get some questions in.
Yeah,
Do not
here we go.
tell I picked you. I'm going to yell at once. So, any questions?
Back there?
One back there? Oh.
I'm just wondering who inspired you, who were your role models growing up, or as you pursued your career?
Okay, role models.
Yep, for me, it was, certainly.
Oh, yeah, repeat the question.
Oh, repeat the question was who our role models were, either as we were growing up or as we started in our careers. And, Linda Ellerby was it for me in the 80s.
Here, here.
She was like the most amazing woman on television. And then when I finally got to public radio, of course, it was Cokie Roberts, Linda Wertheimer,
Yeah.
Nita Totenberg, who unfortunately Cokie has just passed away this year. But the three of them were really, they were the mothers of NPR, first of all, and they were also for sure my role models. And not only because of who they were as a general rule, but also because it taught me what public radio was. And public radio was very much a leader in bringing women into the newsrooms in all kinds of capacity. And so for me, that was a signal that might be somewhere to go.
Good.
My father was such a classic conservative. I grew up in a very Roosevelt-hating household. But from an early age, and I remember Eleanor Roosevelt being our delegate to the UN, which she was, I think, before she died. So somewhere in there, I snuck some Roosevelt books into the house, and actually this is later too, not just then. I was aware of her as a public figure when she was alive, and then somewhere later, I think maybe after college in my 20s, sometime I read a biography of her, and I was familiar with the whole family. But what impressed me, it wasn't that I had aspirations to do what she did, but what impressed me so much is she had such a painful life, and she was so driven to look out for others and make them feel good. And that struck me when I just thought, well, she had all this money and privilege, and I think I was impressed that she turned that into something different and became this really a world figure and a public servant. And in the years since, I think we've seen a lot of the fruits of what she started doing, because she was really a first. So again, it wasn't a model. Role model is maybe not quite right, because I could never imagine myself aspiring to exactly all those things. But it gave me the sense that you could come out of adversity and come out of it not being at all obvious and making a dent.
Great.
Trade you mics here.
Okay.
So, any other questions here?
Oh, there are a lot up
Oh,
there.
okay. This is going to take somebody downstairs first, then I'll go up. Okay, and then. Yeah.
Do you ladies plan on retiring? And if so, how will you make that decision?
Okay, I get this one first because I'm 68. And so what I have found myself, when I left Twitter, I said, I'm hanging out my shingle, I'm going to consult. And that, I have been doing that. But a couple of people recently have said to me, well, you're in semi-retirement. And I bristled, like, no, I'm not. You know, I'm not working a full week for one employer, but how dare you? And then I thought, what am I hating about that? What am I hating about that word? And so I don't know that I have an answer, but I do know that it won't be okay, today is this, and tomorrow a whole other life begins where I'm just going to yoga and walking the dog all day. Those days are over too, I think. I think that's too much of a shock. So I don't know when, but it's going to be very, very, very gradual.
Yeah, I turned 50 this year, and I cannot imagine not working. Well, actually, no, that's the lie. I can't imagine it because I didn't do it for 3 years while I was away. I really did take a self-granted sabbatical. But, you know, I find now I'm basically an independent contractor. I do podcast hosting and some other stuff, editing, writing. And I have the luxury right now, and who knows how long it'll last, of being able to choose what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis. So I don't do anything that I don't want to do. And if I can continue that, I would love to. I may not die at the microphone, but I'll die at the laptop. Do that.
Right.
I made it up here. I'm very winded.
You should be doing this. You're the marathon runner, right?
I liked everything you said. I totally agree with it. Could you speak to people who do not have a bank account, who need to make some of those decisions regarding medical insurance, who feel the way you do, but have not been in a particularly lucrative or well-remunerated job?
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a question that I got a lot when my book came out. Basically, the book is like leaving a job with no plan B, right? And I had to acknowledge in the book that I came at it from a position of great privilege. I was able to do it because I did have a well-paying job. I, at the time, was married, and my husband could pay the mortgage. That said, I did interview a lot of people who did not have that kind of privilege, but also were not willing to stay in jobs that either made them unhappy or where they felt disrespected. And to me, that's a bright line. If you're not being respected at work, you really need to try to find somewhere else. But I will tell you that, I hosted a personal finance show for half a dozen years, and the only real answer I can give to you is that you've got to save and save and save and save, however you possibly can. And I know that's not easy advice to give. And what I said when I was talking with folks on book tour, if you are a family of 4 living on the median income in this country, which I think right now is about $52,000 a year, you probably can't do this. You have to think about your kids. You have to think about their college. You have to think about your own retirement plan. And I don't like saying that. And particularly to your point of health insurance, right now, I will tell you, I'm a single woman, I'm on Obamacare, I'm on the Affordable Care Act, and I'm paying $450 a month with a $6,000 deductible. And I don't make that much money. So the system is broken. It is absolutely broken. Our social safety net is not adequate. It's not adequate. So I think I don't have a great answer for you. Maybe Karen does. But it is, I think one of the things that I talked about in my book is that I think that we are all also constantly pursuing what we think our life is supposed to look like financially. And you don't have to do that. Buy a smaller house, get a cheaper car. I don't subscribe to the don't go to Starbucks because that's silly. That's not going to help you. That's like, I have personal finance friends who say that, and I'm like, oh, geez, don't know.
Coffee matters.
Advocate for better Social Security instead. But sometimes there are really hard choices that you have to make. And it's easier to say, no, I can't. Just can't do it. Can't leave the job. Well, really look at it. Sit down and really look at it and see if there's any way you can. Because your kids are going to know that you don't have joy in your life when you come home. How do you place a value on that?
And I will say, I talk to more and more students who don't want a car, and they don't want a house.
Yes, exactly.
So there is a whole change in that culture as well.
Yeah.
Is there another question up here? Because it's going to take me a while to get downstairs. Right. Can you see me over here?
Yes, we can.
So my question for you is what advice you would give to young ladies who want to go into primarily male industries and are told they can't?
Who is telling you can't?
Find other men.
I mean, I'd be concerned if you were applying for a job and someone said, no, you can't have this job.
Then you go see a lawyer.
Then you go see a lawyer. Yeah. But if it's the sentiment that you can't, or that's too unusual, or no one's ever heard of that, I'm afraid that you have to try and tune out and look for women who have done that or similar things and go talk to them. There are probably some in this audience.
Yeah, go look for women who are about to be an astronaut.
So the reason we did this tonight was because we wanted to honor our Women of the Year. And you should know when I called these two, I was talking very fast. I'd had like 6 Red Bulls. Sorry. They're delicious. And I remember telling them, look, I need you to come because we have these 15 remarkable women, and I don't know the right word to use, but I think I need you as bait so that I can have this huge crowd, so that when I introduce these 15 women, they get a big round of applause that they deserve, and they both said, that's the reason we're coming. So, you know, these 2 women get paid to speak, and they spoke tonight for free so that this applause would happen. So, if it's all right with you all, I would like to introduce our 15 Women of the Year, and then we're going to have you come up on stage. Joe will help you come up on stage. We have given them all a pin that only they get that looks just like that. It's wonderful and beautiful. And if you see it, you know they're one of the chosen ones. So, so that's my word.
One.
You want one? Okay, I ordered them in bulk because I'm going to do this for a long time, right? So.
For 10 days in September, we celebrated 15 amazing women in the pages of the Spokesman-Review. These women were caregivers and teachers, business leaders and volunteers, politicians and doctors. They turned grief into action, hard work into achievement, and dedication into results. A trio of remarkable women sat down to talk about leadership, legacy, mentorship, and inspiration.
So I'm proud of the fact that Pearson has been able to stay in Spokane and to provide really good paying jobs with benefits to employees.
I feel like someone said this to me, that I am continuing Nick's legacy of service. And I went, wow, that really meant a lot to me.
I feel like the footprint I want to leave here at LC is a footprint where they continue to defy the odds. They still have the ability and the motivation to continue to go to a 4-year and get that education and use it to monopolize who they will be in the future.
All of these women of distinction in our inaugural class inspire a legacy of good work to continue in the Pacific Northwest and beyond.
All right, so we're going to meet them. Ready? Yes. So, Tony Lodge. Let me tell you about Tony.
In the late 1980s, Tony Lodge and other local leaders decided the Spokane area needed a centralized place for youth leadership training, substance abuse counseling, mental health services for children and adolescents, and family counseling and education. They got to work and opened the Native Project. Now it offers medical services and a host of other offerings to Native and non-Native people in the greater Spokane area.
Yay, Tony.
Sandra Williams learned the lessons of speaking up and making your case as a student in Sheening. It was a powerful lesson for a 12-year-old to learn, and it's one she continues to put into practice as a journalist, a civil rights leader, and as a community activist. The Maxey Center, intended as a natural extension of the Black Lens newspaper, offers Spokane's Black community a place to call home, a place to organize, and a place to push for racial and social justice. On Captain Tracy Meidl's way to becoming the highest-ranking female officer in the Spokane Police Department, she learned important lessons. She learned the importance of community engagement. She learned that it takes hard work and open communication to improve any situation at hand. These were lessons she learned from fellow officers, and especially from the women police officers who came before her. Linda Thompson is a member of the City Council in Spokane Valley, but it's her work with substance abuse issues that draws well-deserved attention. In 1986, a drunken driver caused a car crash that killed Thompson's 3-year-old son, Trevor Pierce. This profoundly heartbreaking event was made even worse by the fact that the driver had 17 prior arrests for driving while intoxicated. For 26 years, she has led the Greater Spokane Substance Abuse Council, working to promote prevention, destigmatize recovery, and change sentencing guidelines. Much of Jordan Stevenson's activism centers around reproductive rights and women's access to health care. But that doesn't begin to cover the depths of her involvement. She has interned at the Human Rights Education Institute in Coeur d'Alene, helped voter registration drives, served as fellow with the climate justice organization Our Climate, and volunteered for Art Together, a refugee arts organization. All of this while majoring in international affairs at Eastern Washington University.
Yep.
Pam Senske's father, R.A. Pearson, started Pearson Packaging in the family's home. Pam remembers playing with the drill presses in the basement as a child. The business grew, but after her father's death, it could not manage growth and keep up with orders. Senske returned to the family business in the 1980s. In 1991, she took over as CEO and president. During her tenure, in which she was one of the rare business leaders in the world of manufacturing, she helped modernize Pearson as the company put in place resource planning practices. Rural healthcare, Wendy Williams Gilbert knows what she's talking about. She grew up in Lincoln County and Cheney. As a nurse, she worked in rural communities and critical access hospitals. Now, as an educator at the WSU College of Nursing in Spokane, she's in a unique position to study the issue and work to train and keep nurses in rural areas. Maura Ruiz strives to be the kind of advocate she wishes she'd known when she was a teenager thinking about college. Someone who understands life as an immigrant, who knows poverty and homelessness, who embraces the hard work required to achieve a goal. As a college success advisor at Lewis & Clark, Ruiz leads by example. She knows motivation lies within. On July 7th, 2011, Teresa Hart's life shattered. On that day, her son, Nick Newby, a specialist with the National Guard in Post Falls, was killed by a roadside bomb in Baghdad. In the months that followed, Hart would speak with her son's friends and fellow service members. In many cases, they were struggling with PTSD, traumatic brain injury, or financial insecurity. She wanted to help, and in an effort to continue her son's service, she formed New Beginnings, a nonprofit that helps active duty military members and veterans live more comfortable lives.
Yes, please. So, I have to tell you something. We had 140 nominations, and many of them didn't hit our criteria. And I said, that's terrible. We should create a new criteria. So we created another group. Who are the women who deserve to be told they were great years ago and weren't? So we created a group called the Spokane Legends. So now I want to introduce our 5 members of that class.
Susan Kennedy's first involvement in Spokane's musical community did not start off auspiciously. It involved hand-addressing concert invitations in a very cold room. From that night, however, began a relationship with the Spokane Symphony Associates and the Symphony Board that has lasted for decades. From helping with the Christmas Tree Elegance fundraiser to offering backstage tours, Kennedy has done a bit of everything. When Dr. Carol Guthrie began her surgical practice in Spokane, she was one of maybe 2 female surgeons in all of Spokane. As a result, she became a go-to surgeon for breast cancer procedures. And in 2000, she became the first surgeon in town to dedicate their practice to women who have or might have breast cancer. 2 years later, she helped launch the local affiliate of the Susan G. Komen Foundation. Sheila Collins came to Spokane for a temporary job at Expo 74 and stayed. She opened a catering business and became active in the burgeoning neighborhood movement, which gave some decision-making authority to neighborhood councils. She became active in a variety of community boards and eventually found her way to Governor Christine Gregoire's staff in Spokane and Spokane Mayor Mary Verner's community developments. Expo 74 hooked in Susan Burney, who came to Spokane and never left. Her work at the Expo centered on the fair's environmental symposia, and that issue has been a common thread in her work since. She was a co-founder of Northwest Regional Facilitators, a community development nonprofit that morphed into 4 powerhouse agencies. She organized a backpacking school for the Spokane Mountaineers, started a swimming school for homeless children, has served with the YWCA, and worked with the Colville National Forest to develop long-term planning. These days, she's turning her attention to climate change, bringing her life in Spokane full circle. Paula Bulkley works a full-time volunteer job. In 17 years, she has logged nearly 22,000 volunteer hours at Shriners Hospital for Children in Spokane. She's also a big-time elf. The nonprofit charity Fantasy Flight each year flies children to the North Pole where they get to meet Santa and receive presents. And Bulkley is the lead elf in Santa's workshop, making sure those toys and gifts are made to order, and that the 60 or so low-income and at-risk children get to experience the magic of Christmas.
That's our inaugural class. So when we first brought this idea up, I kind of talked about it to a friend of mine at Bank of America, and they immediately wanted to be a part of this. So could we bring up a couple of folks from Bank of America, Catherine and Kurt?
Well, first of all, what an outstanding evening, and I hope you all agree, and congratulations again to all these phenomenal women on these accomplishments. I know I take away a lot from tonight, from our speakers. Pursue your joy. Coffee matters, which I fully believe in. And honestly, we need to keep Rob Curley supplied in Red Bull because he puts on a heck of an event. At Bank of America, we know that diversity and inclusion is what makes us strong, and it's what makes us serve our communities, our clients, and our employees. And we're so proud to be able to be involved in tonight and to come alongside companies like the Spokesman-Review and the Kohl's Company to put this evening together. But one of the things that we wanted to do tonight was introduce an inaugural program that Bank of America is launching in Spokane. So Catherine, would you like to tell them about that program?
Absolutely, Kurt. Thank you so much. It seems so timely as we're standing amidst such greatness here on this stage with these extraordinary women. But we can feel the greatness in this audience here tonight. And at Bank of America, we have for over 15 years run a program known as Neighborhood Builders. And it has been occurring in 49 communities around the nation, serving over 1,000 nonprofits, investing in over 2,000 executive leaders in these nonprofits. It seems as if it was by design, I think, Kurt, that we are announcing this year that we're expanding this program with a Neighborhood Champion program in 40 additional communities, Spokane, Washington being one of them. And I like to think in Spokane, we're taking the lead on some things, because if you're going to announce something like Neighborhood Champions, why not celebrate it with our own champions in our own neighborhood right here tonight? I think you're all aware that yesterday was National Kindness Day, and there's a special movie coming out soon celebrating what a beautiful day it is to be in this neighborhood. And it certainly is because of all of you. But as we celebrate here tonight, the Inland Northwest Women of the Year, it's not a coincidence that this nonprofit, through an invitation-only application process, has invested tirelessly in women in this community. And we found ourselves in a position with community leaders to help us decision, and found it poetic that this nonprofit may perhaps be investing their time in the future Inland Northwest Women of the Year. Now, we'd like to take you to the moment, because only the executive director knows, and we'd like to take you to that surprise time when they found out. Kurt, what do you think?
I think we should show the video.
I think we might have a video.
Friend, I would love the power to give women the freedom to support themselves, to rise up above what society says their value is.
I would like the women that come in the doors to see that there is another way to live.
They don't have to stay status quo. They have value and ability and talents
to get a chance to hold their head high and be proud of themselves.
Our women come to us from so many challenging backgrounds: untreated mental health, prostitution, human trafficking, prison.
I am in recovery from heroin addiction. They actually took a chance on me. I am a felon, and it's really hard to gain employment as a felon.
This ministry and our sweet founder had a heart for these women and knew there had to be more for them.
Since then, I am no longer on food stamps. I am no longer on TANF. I can support myself and my 3-year-old daughter, who is healthy as can be.
And that is what we're here for.
The Bank of America Neighborhood Champion Grant includes a $50,000 investment in their mission and their vision over the next 2 years, as well as 2 years of executive leadership training.
As part of our initiatives around responsible growth, Bank of America is investing in local nonprofit organizations and programs that really address some of the societal challenges that we face today.
It actually is priceless. There is absolutely no way to put a kingdom impacting value on what Bank of America could do for this ministry and for the women we serve. The investment into our barista program would allow us to serve so many women and give them the ability to earn a life-sustaining wage. As Alicia said, being a felon is very, very difficult to get a job. It's hard to get that restart. We could benefit so greatly by somebody investing into us as leaders that we can then invest into all of our staff and help them become better leaders. It's priceless. It truly is priceless. It would be a miracle.
We are about to surprise a local nonprofit with the news that they are receiving the inaugural Bank of America Neighborhood Champion Grant right here in Spokane, Washington. Let's go surprise them.
We're so proud to award Christ Kitchen with the Bank of America Neighborhood Champion Grant.
Please join us in welcoming the inaugural 2019 Bank of America Neighborhood Champion Executive Director, Kim Kelly.
Well, first of all, ladies, I just want to thank you so much for what you do in this community. You guys are what our women hope to be someday. And because you share your stories so openly, it gives them hope to know that they can do this too. They can make an impact on our community. So thank you so much. And I truly do need to honor my Lord and Savior. What he does in and through the women at Christ Kitchen. We wouldn't be here without him, so thank you so much. And I also would like to thank our board, who I had to lie to for so long. I'm going to ask for your forgiveness, but it was for a great cause. And for my sweet family, it takes a lot of time to pour into women that are broken, and they are very gracious and voluntold an awful lot. And I do have to say I'm really grateful. I almost wore that same outfit again tonight, so. But seriously, friends, if you guys don't know about Bank of America, just look at the many, many organizations that they support. These organizations are making a difference in our community, and it wouldn't be possible without them coming alongside us with resources that we would never have in a million years. And I look out at this audience, at these women and men, and you're here because you care about this community. If you just looked up any of the organizations that Bank of America is a part of and invest a little bit of your time, talent, and treasure, can you imagine what we could do in Spokane? So I just challenge you guys to do that. And we're always looking for help, volunteers. We love volunteers. So Bank of America, thank you so much.
So if you are paying attention, we've had two of our last three events, someone's got $50,000. So I'm not saying that's the game plan. So tonight has been this amazing night. I've waited all year for this. And to tell you how much it means to me, honoring these women tonight are executives around the city, members of one of the top 25 ranked college women basketball teams in the country. They weren't invited, they got tickets. They don't know that I know they're here, but I saw their email. A commander from Fairchild, and an astronaut. That's who came to honor you all. So, here's what I say we do. I say we go out in the lobby and we honor the hell out of these women. So thank you all. So just like I told you, I made you the key. We'll just hang out later. I guess come to the tower. Give him. Okay, I didn't really do that, Stacy. Don't worry. I just said that to pull his chain. Thank you all, and thank you all for coming. I hope you had a wonderful night.